This is Tyrese Halliburton, and you're listening to Setting the Pace.
All right, everybody, joining us now on Setting the Pace to give us a Cavaliers perspective with this Pacers-Cavs series here in round two. It is our friend from Fear the Fro podcast. It is Bob Schmidt. He is also the voice of a lot of the Dan Patrick Show voiceovers. So, Bob, thanks so much for coming on. How are you doing?
Good, man. Actually, the Pacers, they made Dan said that the Pacers might upset the Cavaliers. So that was what the focus of the whole Open was 2 days ago.
I'm sure you loved hearing that.
Didn't love it. Didn't love it at all. But, he pays my bills. So I'll just pretend that I'm okay with it and swallow my disdain.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll say that it's going to be a fun series. I'm not sure exactly how it's going to play out, obviously, as we're just kind of going through and previewing what these two teams do well. But I just want to know, because for me personally, like I watch a lot of Pacers basketball and I don't really give much of my time to anybody else, especially since a lot of times Cavs and Pacers are playing during the same time frame. So how would you describe the Cavaliers' identity this season? Like, what do they hang their hat on that makes them so special?
Well, I think it's a big departure from previous seasons. The JB era, it was, okay, defense travels, offense, you get to the postseason, and it doesn't really translate. But Kenny's system has just revolutionized the offense, and that's reflected in, the historic first round, of course, but also just over the course of the season. It's a team that's been the best offensive team in basketball for the majority of the time. So I think that's been the biggest change. I think that's, at least over the course of the first round, take what you want from the team that they were playing in Miami. But I think one of the most encouraging things in that first round series was that you look at the past playoff run from last year, you had Donovan Mitchell on one leg basically drag them through the first round after Jared Allen goes down. Evan Mobley was huge, of course, on the defensive end. But from a scoring standpoint, the last couple of playoff runs have felt like, okay, Donovan has showed up. Last year, we didn't get much in the way of consistent support from the bench. And then you come into this postseason, and obviously the bench got extended minutes in a series where the average margin of victory was 30.5 points. So it's a little skewed if you look at the bench score, and I wouldn't take that at face value. But the fact that they've got so much production from all of their ancillary pieces, not just, you had Garland miss 2 games, and they didn't miss a beat. Game 1 in that Heat series, they get 85 points from their trio of guards, and that's definitely an area that I know Indiana, there's a lot of overlap there. There's a lot of mirroring in the terms of, strong backcourt play. So I think that kind of sharing the wealth on offense is the thing that I find to be the calling card for the Cavs, and the thing that I'm most hopeful will sustain as the level of competition throughout the playoffs just gets better.
Talk to us about the health status of Darius Garland, because the knock on the Pacers, or the joke, is they never play a healthy team in the playoffs, yet we're not causing these injuries. So, tell us now that the Cavs have had a little bit of rest as that Heat series was wrapped up in 4. What is the status of Darius Garland?
Well, they said that he practiced today with the team, but it was non-contact. So I take that to be that they're just playing it safe. I expect him to be ready to go, but with the extended layoff that we got and him not having to play in the last 2 games, I think if that series was, more hotly contested, then maybe Darius does come back and play. But after the first 2 games, to have him sit down and then to win those last 2 games by a combined margin of like 92 points, there was no pressure to rush it. So my hope is that what we saw at practice today in terms of the news that he wasn't participating in the contact drills is really just playing it safe.
You bring up Darius Garland with the injury, Facci, and then, Bob, you talk about that, but I'm just kind of curious because they didn't really need Darius Garland to beat the Heat, because this is a very deep Cavaliers team. So what about their depth gives you confidence that if there is an injury to somebody like a Darius Garland, they could still be super competitive and make it to the Eastern Conference Finals?
I would say 2 guys, Ty Jerome, DeAndre Hunter. Those are the guys that give me the confidence. And I'm sure you guys saw the rumblings. It's a sensitive spot for Cavs fans because some people took the performance of the Cavs in game 3 and 4 in the absence of Darius Garland, and they've reframed it as, well, they're better without Garland on the floor. And obviously that's an absurd assertion, but when you beat a team as badly as they did in games 3 and 4, people will look at the numbers and say, well, look at the data that supports that. But I think the big thing is, Hunter wasn't there for the games in January. The last 2 games at the end of the season, you can't take much from those. He had a good game at the end when they were in kind of, play out the regular season, get ready for the postseason. I think the nice part about the postseason so far, though, is those two together, when they're on the court, it's like a plus 50 net rating. The bench units have been absolutely throttling people. And the best lineups for the Cavs haven't even been the core four or the starting lineup units. It's been when they've downshifted, they've moved Mobley to the center, and they roll Hunter out there, and they roll Jerome out there with Donovan and Merrill. That's their most productive lineup so far in this postseason. So I think the thing that would give me confidence is that even if Darius isn't 100%, and I don't think he was when he was in game 2 there, I mean, I think you could qualify a little bit of the issues that the Cavs had in terms of they had that historic second quarter where they hit like 11 3-pointers. And then the Heat got it down to one possession at the end of game 2, but you could see Darius was laboring. So I think more so than ever, though, I'm less concerned about any individual player because just like the Pacers, I mean, this is a team that has 6-7 guys in double-digit scoring. It is not a team, for all the talk about Darius being the liability, he led the Cavs in scoring if you base it on a per game average. He had 24 points a game. So if that's a problem, then these are great problems for the Cavs to have.
You know, you mentioned it. I looked it up. It was 7 players average double-figure scoring for the Cleveland Cavaliers, which makes it seem like sort of Indiana Pacer-esque how the Pacers have depth as their strength. So talk to me about how this team's maybe looked a little bit different with DeAndre Hunter in the second half of the year. He's always been someone that I've labeled, a Facci guy. I've been banging the table for DeAndre Hunter for years. Love the pickup for you guys. Obviously, you also mentioned the fact that Jerome has come on really strong this year. Talk to us a little bit more about, that depth and also just how they've changed with DeAndre Hunter.
Well, I would say with DeAndre Hunter, the thing, when they brought him in and they essentially consolidated those two pieces in Karras, who obviously Pacers fans are well familiar with, and George Niang, when they did that, initially the debate was, okay, they're doing that with a mindset for the playoffs. They're going to face some large wings, more so focused on Boston, per se. But I think what they found when he came in is that he's proven to be just such a good three-point shooter and he can get his own. So with Max Strus being so fundamental to unlocking the bigs and creating movement in the offense, which creates opportunity for a lot of those other starters, for DeAndre Hunter to be able to come in off the bench, already has a rapport with Jerome because they were college teammates, and then to be as proficient from three as he is. Like there's 7 Cavaliers shooting above 39% from outside the arc in this playoff run. DeAndre Hunter is the best of all of them. He's 8 of 13 at this point. That's over 60%. Now, will that sustain? Probably not. I wouldn't expect it to. But you make the same point that, I do think that there's a lot of overlap in terms of what we're seeing from the Pacers and what we're seeing from the Cavs in terms of where they're succeeding, low turnovers, high assists, high efficiency from outside, distribution of wealth. And to get the type of consistency that we've got from a Jerome and a DeAndre Hunter when they log heavy minutes is something that they never had in a Karras and a George Niang. Those guys had their moments, but the peaks and valleys were far more extreme than you have 7 guys on the Cavs consistently, and then pick who the 8th guy is going to be, whether it's Merrill, who's logging the most minutes, or whether it's Dean Wade, if you want to shift up, which is what happened at the end of the Miami series. When Darius went down, the defense did benefit in the sense that you got a lot more minutes from Dean Wade, whose workload was scaled up in the final 2 games, and they can throw just varying looks at you. If you get a team that has big guards and you want to shift to Donovan playing alongside throw in Dean, that you can do that. But you also have the luxury of having 3 guys who are super comfortable in the pick and roll and getting to the mid-range and hitting those floaters in a Jerome, a Darius Garland, and a Donovan Mitchell. So I do think it's the perfect balance of elite high-end backcourt reserve, elite high-end front court reserve, and if you do suffer dings and bruises along the way, then you're not losing much. And this is not a disrespect to Donovan or Darius, but you're not losing much by having to lean more on a Jerome because he's proven time and time again this season that when he gets minutes, he was more productive than Peyton Pritchard. I know Peyton Pritchard won the 6th Man of the Year, but the key difference there is that Jerome played like 10 less minutes a game. But when you scale that up and you see what he does in games where he plays 25, 28 minutes, the numbers are absurd, and he was nearly a 50, 40, 90 guy, if not for one bad free throw game at the end of the season against the Clippers. These are guys who I don't think anyone was prepared for how efficient DeAndre Hunter was going to be from outside the arc. I didn't think it would sustain. And what I've seen is that, the luxury of being able to have him come in, get his own offense. The only area that I think is a little lacking with DeAndre Hunter sometimes is those units aren't as good on the glass necessarily as you think they would be by plugging in a long wing like DeAndre Hunter. But the consistency you get off the bench is just so much better this year.
I totally agree. I mean, when Ty Jerome was starting for the Cavs at one of the late games in April against the Pacers starters, when they needed to win the game to kind of clinch that 4 seed, he just torched him. He looked like the best player on the floor during that, the first 3 quarters that he played. So to me, that's obviously something you got to keep an eye on there just because of how talented he is. But I will say this, I think Tyler Hero is still in therapy from how much the Cavaliers picked on him on his defensive side of things. So there's been some people that have pointed out that the Cavaliers will do the same thing to one Tyrese Halliburton, who is, easily the Pacers' weakest defender in their starting 5. I would say he's going to give you a little bit more resistance than a Tyler Hero, just because I think he's a smarter basketball player, but still someone that could easily be picked on. So how do you envision the Cavaliers kind of attacking Tyrese Halliburton on the defensive side of things?
I'm sure there'll be some of that, but I think the thing that people overlook when they make that comparison is, and I know you guys are Indiana guys, so I don't mean this as a disparagement to Kel'el Ware, but he's far more of a liability than what you guys have on the back line. Like, Bam is an elite defender. I get that, but Ware was barely playable out there in that series. And the guys flanking Tyrese Halliburton are just so much better than Davion Mitchell, very good player. I think defensively, he's a very solid player. But Tyler Hero, outside of just being a liability, I think it's easier to exploit him because he doesn't have the quality around him that Tyrese Halliburton does. So in that regard, I think that's a little overblown in the same way that I feel like it happens with Darius Garland. People will look at who the Cavs say and say, well, we're just going to target him. But there's plenty of times where the Cavaliers have said, you know what? We're not going to switch. Or we are going to switch, and Darius is going to get tougher assignments sometimes. Like with Boston, they tried to hunt him. With Jason Tatum, it didn't work. And I'm not saying he's at a physical disadvantage. There are definitely going to be times where he will get exploited, but he is a very high activity, high effort defender. And sometimes I feel like the narrative just kind of follows where it's like, okay, yeah, he's not an elite defender, but he's got 2 monsters behind him. And in the case of Tyrese Halliburton, yeah, maybe he's not the best defender in the world, but he's got Nesmith. He's got Nembhard out there. He's got Miles roaming the back line. Pascal's a perfectly capable, above average defender. So I don't think it's going to be as pronounced. I think I would expect to see, on the defensive end, the Cavs will continue to do a lot of the same things they do, which is they can attack you with multiple ball handlers. They'll probably, on the defensive side, they'll have Max shadowing Tyrese as much as he can, but they'll switch as needed. You might see some zone at times when you go to those units where you have, a TJ McConnell spelling minutes or things of that nature. But I do think the Cavaliers will try a bunch of different stuff on him. I think you'll see them show some size at times. I think we'll get a solid Dean performance. I do think they took some things away from that series with Miami, which is, that length between Hunter, Mobley, Jared Allen, Dean Wade, it gives them the chance to kind of make things difficult. But I don't think it's going to be so much a situation of the Cavs hunting Tyrese Halliburton. And maybe I'll be proven totally wrong. I think that when given the opportunity, they will. But I don't think they'll go out of their way to do it in the same way that like a Boston would, where they seem so fixated on hunting mismatches. I don't think that's going to be the Cavs' approach.
And we did see Gary Trent Jr. go off for some really big games against Tyrese Halliburton and the Pacers. And that was something that was tough because obviously we have Nembhard guarding, Damian Lillard, and you want him on that matchup at times. So that is a possibility for what you said. But Bob, look, I'm not one to wear shoes in the house, but I'm going to be honest. I'm shaking in my boots a little bit at the idea of Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen down low, that type of length, that type of size, that type of, defensive, abilities. Is Indiana in trouble, with those two guarding the paint because there's not a lot of size with this Pacers team?
That is the area that I'm most optimistic about, honestly. I think your guards, I think our guards are great, but I think you have some great guards and you can get some production on that end. I thought we had very little data from when we matched up that was relevant, just due to how the season played out in the context. But I think Mobley and Allen are going to be kind of the key factor for the Cavs in this series. I am supremely confident that they can impose their will. And part of that is just because I think Jared Allen has really dialed in terms of the things that we need from him, which is the biggest concerns for the Cavs a lot of times are, okay, how can you do in terms of defensive rebounding, ending possessions, creating second opportunities? If there's one benefit to facing a Pacers team, it's that you guys suffer a lot of the same issues as us in that regard. You're not a prolific offensive rebounding team. It's one of the areas where I think, okay, this can't be exploited in a way that you see against, like when we faced Houston or some of these just mug you teams with a ton of physicality. I like that essentially in a lot of ways our styles mirror one another, because I do like our backline, and I think they've proven to have a great rapport with one another. And getting the end of that series where they really were just able to play with a lot of bigger units, I think will hopefully carry some momentum into this series. But I'll be interested to see how it plays out, because the one thing I took from the Pacers game in January was that was still when Max was coming back from injury. And there was a lot of Dean Wade on Pascal Siakam in that game where he had a quiet second half, but he was going to work on him in the block, which is unusual. A lot of people, Dean's a very fundamentally sound defender, and people don't really target him. And I thought Pascal was pretty aggressive and pretty confident. And you know what? If I get him on the block, like, I'm going to go to work. And he had a great first half. It's just they then switched to his zone, and it kind of took Pascal out of the rhythm there. So I think it'll be interesting to see. But I think, me personally, the matchups I'm most interested in are the two big men units with the Cavs when we have both Allen and Mobley out there. And people will say, TJ and Ty. I'm more curious to see the moments where it's Nembhard versus Ty, because I think what you get out of TJ, but I think there's more give on that end in terms of his limitations offensively. Nembhard's such an aggressive defender, and Ty is such a body contact hunter that I could see that being a matchup when they get into those situations where they're guarding one another that could lead to some fireworks in terms of. They're both just such competitors. Those are the matchups I'm very curious about. And I'm curious to see, will we see Nembhard on Garland, Nesmith on Donovan Mitchell, or will it be reversed? Because like you said, Nesmith wasn't there in the beginning. So I will be curious to see how the Pacers approach those matchups.
Yeah, I would definitely say from the times I've seen Ty Jerome play against the Pacers, he's very vocal and very much likes to talk his trash. So I think that him versus Nembhard could be very compelling television right there. But I would assume that Nembhard draws the Garland matchup first, and they would put Nesmith on Mitchell, just because I think it gives Mitchell a little bit more of a bigger body to go up against, just kind of like we saw with Jalen Brunson as well. But we'll have to see what kind of adjustments Carlisle makes there and what he thinks is the best option for his team. But this is a series where I think Ben Shepherd will have to probably be a little bit more utilized, just because of how guard dominant the Cavaliers are. But you bring up Pascal Siakam and what he was, able to do against Dean Wade at times earlier in the season, but look what he just did against Giannis and the Bucks. And I will say, the first 3 games, he was averaging over 20 points a game, and then the last 2 games really struggled from the field. So as the series wears on, I wonder if it's going to wear him down a little bit, but the matchup potentially between him and Mobley is really fascinating in terms of how Mobley will defend him, because Mobley, Defensive Player of the Year, you can make the case that he's a better overall defender than Giannis is right now, but Giannis is still respected as one of the top big man defenders too in the league, and Pascal Siakam kind of had his way at times with him. So, and the Pacers did a very good job of hunting those mismatches when they would get a smaller person switched onto him, because the Bucks started switching everything. So if the Cavs start switching stuff, obviously they're going to get Siakam the ball in those mismatches. But how do you think defensively Mobley matches up trying to defend Siakam?
Well, I think he's different from Giannis in that Giannis is more of your brute force, don't let you get back down guy, where Mobley is more of a positioning, contest cleanly, fundamentally sound type of guy. But truthfully, I'm not expecting a ton of, okay, you mirror this guy all over the court. I'm expecting to see a fair amount of zone and switching with the Cavaliers, especially with the results they got at the back end of that Miami unit, where they've got 4 long guys they can throw at you. And not to say that Hunter's some lockdown defender, but when they're rolling out units with Allen and Mobley, Allen is not known anything like what Mobley is in terms of versatility from the rim to the 3-point line, but he's still very mobile out on the perimeter, to the point where I think you'll see a lot of situations where they're going to roll out enough size that they'll try to switch and they'll try to do those things. And then if it just gets taken advantage of, because you've got guys who can, hit mid-range shots in space, and Nembhard's great at it. Siakam can be great at it. But I think that will be viewed as a win for the Cavaliers, because I think it's going to be more of a focus of limiting the damage you do to us from the outside and conceding some of that stuff in the mid-range if the zone gives it up or if switches give opportunities and things of that nature. So that would be my expectation. Could be completely wrong, because, again, the sample is so muddied from the regular season that it's like, okay, I don't know if I should expect to see more of what we saw, but I thought part of the reason that the Cavaliers played so much zone and why they did so much switching in the regular season was to try to get to a point where they weren't going into the playoffs, because so much of the playoffs is about, hiding your warts and things like that. And I think the Cavs wanted to be prepared as much as possible, give guys as many reps as possible to try to play cleanly without having to scramble and cover up for guys' liabilities and see, okay, what can we get away with versus what is going to be something that we're going to have to adapt and change depending on the matchup that we get.
Yeah, the Cavs, obviously, it was historically one of the most, if not the most lopsided series in NBA history that the Cavs just went through with the Miami Heat. The Pacers, on the other hand, they've kind of been like the comeback kids this year. They have so many comeback wins with down 10 points or more. Obviously, even against the Bucks this year, they had multiple game winners. Do you feel that maybe the Cavs haven't been tested in a little bit? And if it is a close game, you tell me, like, where is that ball going at the end? Who is taking that last shot? And do you think that the Cavs, like, how do you feel about them in crunch time of a very close game?
Well, okay, so I don't have the numbers in front of me, but what I would tell you is if you ask any Cavalier fan who at the end of the game is the most reliable, Darius Garland was unbelievable this season. He was one of the best players in the clutch. For a large part of the season, he was shooting 60-45 splits, which in clutch moments is insane. Comparatively speaking, Tyler Hero was horrific over the course of the season. And even your high volume guys, Ant kind of pulled it up towards the end. But time and time again, Darius Garland proved that he really only had one wart in terms of clutch performances, and that was a Houston game in January where he went to the free throw line with a chance to win it, and he finally missed a couple of free throws in a row, and that cost us that game essentially. But outside of that, the closer for the Cavaliers throughout the majority of the season has been Darius Garland. Not only did he score more points than Donovan Mitchell, but he did it super efficiently, and the assist-to-turnover ratio in those moments was insane, which is something Pacers fans understand all too well. This last series, Halliburton, like a 10-to-1 assist-to-turnover ratio, something to that effect. Very similar to what Ty Jerome did in this last round. So I think in that regard, they're going to take what the defense gives them, but Darius Garland is the one in those moments over the course of the season who's been the steadiest hand in terms of being able to create for himself and create great opportunities for others.
Who do you think gets the first crack at trying to slow down Tyrese Halliburton?
I think it'll be Max. I expect them to put Max, but I think if he starts torching Max, because Tyler Hero had plenty of success against Max. Max is super active. He's a super tryhard, but sometimes that can get him in trouble. And I think if they find that that's problematic, what I'm interested to see is, okay, will they be comfortable in the second unit, leaving guys like DeAndre Hunter, Dean Wade out there for extended stretches to try to throw more size at him for when he gets into the teeth of the defense, because you guys are just so good. I mean, he's so good at creating opportunities for others. I think a lot of it is going to be, okay, how can we prevent him from just collapsing the defense, getting inside, throwing it to those corners where, I was looking at, I think it was Nesmith. I don't think he's missed from the left corner
He's been good.
in this postseason. I'm pretty sure he does not have, and from the corners in general, he's unbelievable. But I think he was 4 for 4 or 5 from 5 from the left corner when I looked at that, and I was like, man, this is. I mean, and those are generally, when I see corner threes, I'm like, those are usually created through a Tyrese Halliburton or through a point guard, getting into the teeth of the defense.
Bob, I'd be curious to get your thought and also your pulse on the Cavs fan base. Like, when they see the Indiana Pacers, what is their view on them? Because we were incredibly disrespected by the national media against the Bucks, really not giving us a chance, not factoring anything into the fact that this exact group went to the Eastern Conference Finals last year and now just handled the Bucks in 5. And when I say handled, I mean outside of one bad half. It was just a half and a quarter, I guess you could say. 3 quarters in this whole entire series. It was all Indiana. So what is the confidence level of the Cavs fan base? Are they saying, Cavs in 5? Are they saying Cavs in 6? Please tell me they ain't saying Cavs sweep. But what are they saying?
I think the majority of people are either 5 or 6. But in some ways, this is what I'll say. I'm not trying to placate to your audience.
What do you got?
I think a lot of that, though, is just based on what they saw in the first round. I think there's a group that believes if the Cavs play their game, it doesn't matter who you throw out there against them. If they play to what they know they're capable of, they believe that they'll win. And I think and this is, again, not trying to sound disrespectful, but if I'm looking at the Pacers, the appeal for most Cavs fans is what's really been detrimental to the Cavs these past couple postseasons is you had that terrible series against the Knicks where it was super physical. They lost. They took a ton of bullets in the press, and that's when a lot of people just jumped off the Cavs bandwagon then. But then Orlando mucked it up. Allen broke a rib, missed the rest of the playoffs. They didn't go into the Boston series full strength. Donovan was on one leg. So I think there's an appeal, and it's not about, well, we think we can beat the Pacers easier. It's we prefer this style of play. We think it's very similar to what the Cavs do in a lot of ways. We just think incrementally, maybe we're 10% better at it. And that hopefully over the course of a series, my fear with the Pacers is generally they can score in bunches, in spurts. You can't afford letdowns. But I think the same would often be said by the people who face the Cavaliers where, the Cavalanche or whatever you want to call it, where they just score tons of points over a short span. That's usually the way they put games away oftentimes. It's not that a team gets outclassed for 48 minutes. It's that they get outclassed for 6 minutes, and they just can't dig themselves out of that hole. So I do think Cavs fans are excited for this matchup because both of us suffered the same fate last year. You just went further and suffered more injuries because you played longer. But a huge part of this season, resting the starters where all of our starters played career lows in minutes, the whole point was to get to the postseason healthy. So I think while people respect the Pacers and especially the second half and the improvement they've done, because we've had second half since January 1st, we're basically the same record. So it's not as if you guys haven't performed great. Halliburton's been unbelievable in the second half of the season, and everybody knows what the guy's capable of. But Donovan Mitchell, the Pacers are amongst his top 4 or 5 teams in terms of how well he performs historically against them. The consistency we're getting from the secondary creators and the health gives the Cavs fans a lot of confidence. So I think most of them would land between 5 and 6.
You know what else gives Cavs fans confidence? You guys won freaking 64 games this season. Why wouldn't you be confident? I mean, that's a heck of a season. Like number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. I don't think anybody predicted that. Probably not even Cavs fans. So
no. Well, it's funny because I did this Cavs consensus survey before the season. And it was just essentially a slew of questions, and 275 people filled it out.
Oh my gosh!
There was only 2 that predicted over 60 wins.
That's
so
crazy.
Hard to predict.
Yeah.
It's hard. 60 wins is special. I mean, it really is. You guys, just great season. Got to give it up to you guys. And I think that that's what probably feels different this year is you went through the woes last year, some injuries, and now this is a really good Cavs team. So, I know I'm barging in here, but I just want to say the one thing is don't underestimate the chemistry of this Pacers team. I saw you guys dismantle a Heat team that looked like they didn't have much going on.
1, 2, 3 Cancun from basically.
Exactly. It was just a ticking time bomb of already making plans for after that season ended. This Pacers team, the chemistry is so real from top to bottom. They really did run it back. They didn't make any real changes. Benedict Mathurin, being healthy and Jarris Walker, getting some minutes here and there. That was really the changes, and those were already guys that were internally there. So that's why.
And the other thing I think is kind of disrespectful is that when people try to parallel Halliburton to Hero on the defensive side of the ball, it's okay, but on the other end, one guy is maybe the smartest player in basketball, and he doesn't turn the ball over. It's so to say okay, they're going to target, but he's going to get it back on the other end in a way where Hero is never going to be capable of doing that. So I think that part's ridiculous. I don't think any Cavalier fan, I would hope not, disrespects what they're capable of, because we've seen it time and time again over the past couple of seasons. Doesn't matter if people thought the Cavs were better. Those regular season matchups, when at full strength, have been hotly contested matchups. And I'm not taking anything for granted. I'm just feeling good that the Cavs are healthy. They seem to be playing the similar style of basketball we saw in the regular season. Guys don't seem to be shrinking under the pressure. But again, when you're playing Miami, what pressure is there really? It didn't feel like an immense amount of pressure. So I'm trying not to get too high on results against a team that I think was kind of, majorly outclassed in terms of talent and just chemistry and all that. I'm taking nothing for granted in this one. I'm just hoping that everybody stays healthy and they continue to pour it on offensively to some degree.
Yeah, I mean, Miami was like the 10th seed, right? And they end up working their way up until like getting into the play-in and being the 8th seed. So like, congratulations to them, but like congratulations, you get to get swept in 4 games and have the most lopsided sweep in playoff history. So honestly, it's like you really didn't benefit from anything. But I will say this, Facci is a great point about the chemistry of the Pacers. I do think that matters a lot just because that same starting 5 went through this run last year. And so they just kind of have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. And I will say this, Bob, if you go back and look at some of these regular season games the Pacers had here in the month of March, and like even like the game winner that we saw Tyrese hit against Giannis on that and 1 3-pointer with Reggie Miller on the call, I mean, they have just been in so many clutch moments this whole entire year where they've just found ways to win. I mean, you don't get to 50 wins just, easily. I mean, it takes a lot of work. And the fact that they were 10-15 at the beginning of the year to flip that and go 40 and whatever the number is there math wise. So I just 40-32. So, or 40-22, excuse me. So I just think that they've just really, they're a different team than they were early on. And so you mentioned their records pretty much since January 1st, 35-4 for the Cavs, 34-4 for the Pacers. Like it's pretty much identical. And a lot of the same numbers in terms of like points per game and things like that. And shooting splits are very similar as well. So
I saw that tweet you posted. It was, it was kind of like the player A, player B. You would be hard pressed to even know which one was which. They were so similar.
Yeah.
So.
And that's kind of where I'm at with it. It's just like, I think they're very similar in terms of style of play and like who they have in terms of like how they play basketball, right? Like the style of play. But I would agree with you. I think the Cavs are probably just deeper in terms of overall talent compared to what the Pacers have in terms of like their bench and everything like that. Because the Pacers, their bench to me is very up and down. And I think that it's been kind of a roller coaster of a ride trying to figure out what version of the bench you're going to get. And I think that they're just a little bit more limited with what they can do, where the Cavs are kind of like, we know who we are. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Not saying the Pacers don't, but I feel more confident in Cleveland's bench. And I actually kind of feel a little bit more threatened by Cleveland's bench than I do Indiana's. And so I'll just put it out there. I mean, I think it's going to be a very competitive series. I'm not going to give my predictions right now, but I am curious, if you were to give your predictions for this series, what would they be?
Well, I'm so tired of my fellow Cavs content creators hedging that I'm just going to boldly say 5, even though, I think it's entirely possible that I think 5 or 6, I would feel that way, but I'm going to say 5 because you know what? I want to believe. I feel so much trauma from past things. It's like, okay, if I'm not going to get hyped up after the single best series in playoff history where seemingly everything is working, I get it. We're not playing the same team. But I'm just gonna live with the humiliation if I get proven wrong and just say, okay, well, I was too optimistic. Shoot me.
I respect your call. I mean, hearing people saying sweep it's just gotten disrespectful. I remember hearing sweep, they were saying that the Knicks were going to sweep us and we won the series in 7. And it's like, yes, we did get swept against the Celtics, but it was a hard fought swept,
No, that was I don't want to sound like a Laker fan or anything, but that was the most hotly contested sweep.
It was. Look, they said we played them better than Dallas did in the finals. So, You know what? I think it's going to be a really good series. I think it's going to be a really entertaining series. I'm also really excited to get off of ESPNU and NBA TV and all those other, channels and networks that didn't really, I feel like, deserve the Pacers. Like, we played some good basketball. I want to see more of it in prime time. I'm excited for everyone to give the Cavs, give the Pacers the respect that they deserve. But Bob, we really appreciate you coming on. Can't believe it's already been about 4 months since we had you back on. And I think we'll probably have a lot to talk about this series, either as it goes on or in the off season. But tell everybody where they could find you on social media, some of the awesome content you're putting out as well.
I am at Fear the Fro Pod on Twitter. And then if you follow podcasts, just search Fear the Fro. You'll find 2 feeds. One is the show, and one is the various parody songs that I've created. And I tell you what, guys, if you take us to 7 or defeat us in this series, here's my commitment to you, my great friend is setting the pace. I will make a theme song for setting the pace. So that is my promise to you. You don't even have to win the series. Just take it to 7, or you defeat it, and I will throw one that you can throw in the mix alongside, Alex and Facci.
I like it. Hey, Bob, we appreciate you, and keep up the great work. It's a pleasure having you back on again.
I love you guys. Thank you for having me on. I'm looking forward to a great series, and I'm looking forward to engaging with all of your lovely fans, Rooster and all the boys.
Rooster will be in there.
He's been waiting for a shout out for a while. We haven't shouted him out for a minute.
That's my guy. One of my favorite guys that I interact with in your community.
You should ask him in a private message about the recent jerseys he ordered. That's all I'm gonna say. I'll let him tell the story.
I'll fire it off after I get off the pod here.
Alrighty, man. Well, that's gonna do it for us today on Setting the Pace. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and we'll be back soon to talk more Pacers Cavs here on your favorite podcast.
Yeah! Yeah! Yeah!